Hello, my name is Matthew, and I had a conversation the other day about the books of the 20th century, and made me think about my favorite books of the 20th century. And so I spent the past couple minutes looking at my shelves and writing a list, giving it some thought, and putting together a list of my favorite books of the 20th century. And to be clear, I'm not saying the greatest books or the best books. Straight away, I can see glaring omissions, strange peculiarities, and really it's a list that probably shows my sensibilities more than the best books of the 20th century. And I thought I would go through them. I did give myself some parameters. So, for the most part, they're books that are actually on my shelves. One, it's nice to be able to hold up a book on a camera and say and talk about it. But also, maybe pragmatically, if it's not on my shelf, it makes it to be a strange argument for why it would be one of my favorites. The books on my shelves in general are the books that I want to keep around me. And so that was sort of what I was looking at. I'm dealing with fiction, specifically novels. And so I think we'll start. I do want to have maybe like an honorary mention just because I came across it and I'm not sure that I've talked about it on camera before, but it's a nonfiction. So this is like the one nonfiction honorary mention. And it kind of relates to the books that I'm talking about in a certain sense. So I have stacks of books next to me. It's From Dawn to Decadence, 1500 to the Present, 500 Years of Western Culture by Jacques Barzun. And this is a book that has been well read and well loved. Barzun is wonderful company, seems to know everything, seems to have read everything, seems to have been able to make all the connections between a million different threads throughout countries and time, and it's a very literary, cultural walk through memory lane of high points in the great things that humans can do. And the thing that I love about this book in particular, obviously Barzun is knowledgeable, but he's also sympathetic, and he has bullet points where he'll say like if you're interested in this writer or this subject, here's a reading recommendation. And then he'll also say, if you're just looking for an introduction, here's a reading recommendation. If you're looking for something that's really comprehensive and you already kind of know your stuff, here's a reading recommendation. And I used to read this for the French writers and the Italians and the Spanish and the ancients and on and on and on. It's just this seemingly never-ending list of terrific book recommendations and context. So there's that. The one book that I don't actually have to hold up because I only have it as an e-file on my e-reader is The Lord of the Rings, which might sound surprising if you've seen a handful of my videos. I don't I don't read too many science fiction or fantasy books, but I've read The Lord of the Rings twice now. and only in the past few years. I've seen the movies, which I think the movies are really good, but I was just so impressed with the immersiveness of the world. The characters are wonderful. Um, I would just love to live in Hobbiton. It's Daphne. So okay, a couple other things. Let's see. Speaking of fantasy, I do want to mention Dune. Um, Again, maybe because it was so surprising to me. I've read this now twice in maybe 3 years. It's a relatively recent read. Um, and there are sequels which I do plan to get to, but I haven't gotten to yet. Um, Again, it's an immersive world. This one, more than the Lord of the Rings, throws you into a world. Um, and the fact that it's already a book that I'm revisiting makes me hold it in high regard. Okay. Let's see. The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro. I have this cover. It's set post World War II in Japan, and it's a family dealing with an aftermath. Something that I'm always so fascinated with, and this book does so well, is day to day goings on, quotidian little things. And this translation I found so beautifully written. I've only read it once, but it's really great. So the Makioka Sisters. This is funny. So, and maybe a cheat, but Franny and Zoe, that little book by Salinger, which is really two kind of long short stories as a companion piece, each is a companion to the other, and the larger Salinger universe of the Glass family. Um, and it's kind of an example of I'm not sure about the greatness or how it stacks up against all the other great books of the 20th century, but there is nostalgia. So Franny and Zoe, I went up and down my walls looking for this book because I know that I have it. And I found Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters and Nine Stories. I couldn't find my Franny and Zoe, but Zoe in particular, I remember having wonderful conversations with my old friend Bob talking about Zoe and memories of him telling me the story. And I've read it many, many times. I think I've made a video on Zoe. If I've made videos, maybe I'll try to like put links in. I'm not sure. But I'm a very big fan of Salinger. The short stories, Catcher in the Rye had its moment, but Franny and Zoe I just think is wonderful. Okay. 1984. So this is kind of an interesting pick, and I said earlier that I don't read much science fiction or fantasy, and I feel like I'm now contradicting myself. I feel like objectively, I feel Orwell has many, many other better works. Keep the Apodistra Flying and The Road to Wigan Pier and Down and Out in Paris and London. But I go back to 1984 and read it and think about it with substance and new perspective more than I do with any other Orwell books. And when I think of a favorite, I do feel like time is an element. The more that I spend time, the more that I revisit a book, the more that I think about a book, it gets closer to my heart. So although I might think other books are done, executed more precisely or better, 1984 has had a lasting power that maybe 10 years ago I would have found surprising. Okay. This is a great example of a book that demonstrates my sensibilities compared to uh, a general consensus of the best books of the 20th century. This translated title is Death on Credit by Celine. I prefer Death on the Installment Plan as a translation. Maybe it's just what I was my first encounter. Death on the Installment Plan by Celine. Strangely, it's actually the same translator, but a different edition. But anyway, it is a violent, dark, angry, bursting novel, full of personality and voice. It's inescapable, and I, in a very dark, bleak way, find hilarious and fascinating to be in this mind, this horrifying scenario that the main character, author, narrator goes through, and just to be constantly fueled with rage and fire and brimstone, and to have opinions on everything, and to just be screaming and raging. I just love Celine. Journey to the End of the Night and the sequel, or maybe the third installment, Death on the Installment Plan. I just find I feel like they're masterpieces for what it's trying to achieve. Okay, what do we have? Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon. So, Gravity's Rainbow, again, to just sort of delineate exactly what I'm trying to talk about, is impressive and notable and probably his best book and all that kind of stuff. But Mason and Dixon, I found wildly entertaining. These two on their adventure was just so funny. And Pynchon's probably known for that sort of soup of genres where it's very highbrow and lowbrow, and the kaleidoscopic linguistic pyrotechnics, and also having moving stories and things that are grotesque and obscure and all that stuff. And I think it's so well done in this book. I think it's a good introduction into Thomas Pynchon if you're already interested in reading Thomas Pynchon and maybe you intimidated by Gravity's Rainbow. It's superb. Okay. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. A lot of these recommendations, by the way, I'm holding up single books because that's what I'm talking about. But without exception, I'm also recommending the author. I've never read A Bad Sentence by Virginia Woolf. Everything that I've read has just been beautiful and thoughtful and inventive. Andy. Mrs. Dalloway has some similarities to Ulysses by James Joyce, which will be absent for the rest of this video. in the sense that it's a day in the life. Um, and I just can't get away from the magisterial beauty of the English language that she is able to just put together. Um, I love Virginia Woolf. Um, the Castle by Kafka. So probably The Trial is the great book, his best book. They're all unfinished. Um, but I love The Castle. It is so strange, so dark, so funny. There is that it's the Kafka-esque element where it's fantastical and dreamlike and surreal, but in these absurdities, um, there are so many reference points for everyday interactions. I'm constantly finding myself in situations at work or other, anywhere that remind me of situations that you find in these like completely outlandish, outrageous, dreamlike, absurd, surreal situations that are actually in this book. And that balancing act, I find unendingly entertaining and impressive. Another kind of nostalgic piece, but these are kind of my favorites, and it's The Grass Harp by Capote. If I was including short stories, Christmas Memory and The Thanksgiving Visitor would be high runners in this kind of list. I read them every year. And I read this every couple years. I just find it so heartwarming. I feel like it's beautifully written. It reminds me of memories of childhood and wonder and warmth and love. I think Capote, more than any of these other people and books that I've mentioned, Capote probably has like the widest variance of quality. But when he is great, it's just hard to find someone that outshines him. This might be a contentious pick for some people, considering the omissions, but it's one of my favorites. I'm gonna hold up one volume because I didn't feel like getting the whole thing down, but Remembrance of Things Past or In Search of Lost Time by Proust. This is the last volume, Finding Time Again, which finally came to America maybe last year or the year before. It was part of an edition that came out in the UK like a decade ago, and we finally got the concluding volume. And obviously, Proust isn't for everyone. I just find the language to be beautiful, the observations, the character development, just never missing a single detail and noticing everything and having thoughts about everything. Andy. Proust, Search for Lost Time, and then mix these things up. God, let's see, got that. I have two last books, and the one, oh, there it is. God, this is a very recent read, but a book that blew my brain out of the back of my skull. It's Every Man Dies Alone by Hans Fallada. It's set in Soviet Russia. And it was mesmerizing. As the book goes along, we have intertwining characters and situations. It's a city that is extremely populated. Everywhere you turn, there's people, and they all get little moments of humanity. All the while, they're all policing one another, and they're all terrified of the Gestapo. And as it goes along, the book becomes a black hole. The terror ensues, the consequences ensue, and for the characters involved, there is only one direction. No matter which way they turn, they are always getting sucked into the black hole. And it is harrowing. Just an incredible book. Now, all of these are kind of interchangeable, and I could list 20 or 30 different books in the 20th century. Again, these are just the ones I pulled off my shelves. But the number one book, I don't think there's any risk or challenge of it not being in the top spot in my mind. That's The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Just like a genius. When I think about towering figures like Victor Hugo and Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and Cervantes, some of these books, some of these authors, and the ability to spend time with them and realizing like they're brilliant, and they're offering their thoughts to me and communicating it in a way that I can read and understand and learn from. And they're so brilliant, I'm going to learn from them my entire life. It's a microcosm book set in the Alps. We have our main character, which is, oh my god, Hans Castorp, in this sanitarium. And I've made, I think, 10 videos talking about the Magic Mountain. It's modern, it's a modernist novel, it's a microcosm novel, and Thomas Mann, I feel like, and I've said this before, is just good company. He introduces himself, recognizes I'm presenting a very long, very difficult book, and we're gonna spend time together. I'm gonna be here the whole way, so don't worry. The main character spends 7 years in the sanitarium, and it has like the greatest introduction where he says, it's a long book, but it's not going to take you 7 years. Wonderful, wonderful. So those are the books I'm going to mention as some of my favorites. I'm not necessarily saying any of these are recommendations. That would depend on your reading taste, but these are books that I've really enjoyed. So I'd be very interested to know some of your favorite books of the 20th century. Please leave a comment below, and thank you for watching, and take care.